Good afternoon to you all. And today is it's a very important session. Morning session is on seed, then is on biostimulants. Now it is most important, that is mainly on water resource management and water use efficiency. And particularly these perspectives of water use efficiency in natural farming is very crucial and very important also. Dr. Mihir Shah Sahab is here. Yesterday he shared a little bit input on overview about this natural farming he shared with us. And sir yesterday also I told you regarding sir has intensively worked on this water resource management, and he is a professor chair and particularly on water science and policy programs in different university, particularly Nadar University also. And he was a planning commission member during 2009 to 2014, and he held the portfolio of water resources and rural development, Panchayat Raj, and intensively he worked on these areas. And in 2015 also he was a chair for committee on restructuring and Central Water Commission and Central Groundwater Board also. And he submitted report, and later on so many changes were after his submission. So many changes were made in Central Water Commission also. Basically, sir is a academics graduate, and post graduation and PhD he did it, and he got so many awards during his graduation, PG and PhD time also. And he served as a professor, and later on he resigned for that post, and he formed the Samaj Pragati Sahyog. That's an organization, and particularly they are focusing much on grassroots level initiatives they have done, particularly on water and livelihood securities. And sir, this SPSS, they are working in millions of acres across 72 districts across the country, mostly in backward districts they are working on that, and mainly on tribal areas also. And he also founder of Bharat Rural Livelihood Foundation. And so he is a distinguished professor of Shiv Nadar University presently also. He has visited so many international organizations, and he addressed almost worldwide. He gave address on this water resource management, and particularly in Washington and Paris, London, so many countries, Austria, Singapore, different countries he visited. And he's internationally, 2016 also International Eco Summit Congress, it was conducted in 2016, and he also keynote address he has given for that program. There's like so many areas in water resource management, and he's a pioneer in water resource management. And we requested him, and it's our fortunate that you are having with us today. And all the participants are very fortunate enough being with you. And we are yesterday within 10 minutes talk, we are very much enlightened. And it's we hope today around 1 hour, it's very much useful session for all of us and the country also, sir. Over to Mihir Shah sir. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your very kind words of introduction, Renuka. So, friends, today, what I want to talk about is the relationship between two kinds of crises that India is facing today. One is the farmers' crisis, the agrarian crisis, and the other is the water crisis. And what I want to show to you is that these two are deeply interlinked with each other. You cannot understand the problems in water without understanding the problems in agriculture, and you cannot understand the crisis of agriculture without understanding the issues on the water side. So what I will try to do is to briefly describe the water crisis, the farmers' crisis, and then show you the link between the two. And finally, when we come to the solution, what is the way out of both the farm crisis and the water crisis, we will look at how natural farming holds the key to resolving India's interlinked farm and water crisis. So, as I said, there is actually a two-way relationship between water and farming. And my argument to you today is that without making a paradigm shift in farming, India's water problem cannot be solved. And without making a paradigm shift in water, India's farm crisis will remain unresolved. But if we draw the right lessons from the experience of the Green Revolution, then it is possible to address the crisis facing our farmers while also solving our water problem. But if we do not draw the right lessons from the Green Revolution, both the water and farm crisis in India will remain unresolved, and it could actually get even more aggravated. So, what are the basic facts about water in India? Why are we talking about a water crisis, and what are the large facts? The single most important fact I would say about water in India, according to the FAO's Aquastat database, this database is the single most important database on water anywhere in the world. The FAO collects all the data and puts it together. According to this database, agriculture takes up 90% of India's water. So straight away you can see the link that unless we are going to do something about this, we are not going to be able to solve India's water problem. And further, if we dive a little deeper, we see that over the last 4 decades, the decades of the Green Revolution, around 84% of the total addition to net irrigated area in India has come from groundwater. So groundwater, within water, it is groundwater which has driven the Green Revolution and the growth in irrigation in India in the last 40 years. At 250 billion cubic meters, India draws more groundwater every year than any other country in the world. India's annual consumption of groundwater is more than that of China and the United States of America combined. China and the US are the second and third largest consumers of groundwater. If we put both of them together, India is actually consuming even more than that. And what is happening is, as a result of this great dependence on groundwater, we are drilling very deep into the ground through our bore wells. And that has led to a situation where 60% of India's districts today suffer from either falling water tables and or falling water quality. In terms of water quality, we have very, very serious problems now. There is arsenic, there is fluoride, there is manganese, there is uranium in the groundwater that our children and everyone is drinking. And this is leading to major health issues, which we will discuss in a minute. So what is behind this whole situation? We have to go into what is called the science of hydrogeology. Now that means that the water that we get from below the ground, how much water we can draw, how fast that water can be recharged, depends on the nature of the aquifers. Aquifers are the underground storehouses of water. And what we sometimes forget in our over enthusiasm to drawing groundwater from below the ground, what we forget is that 2/3 of India's land mass is underlain by hard rock formations. So hard rock formations are those rocks where the natural rate of groundwater recharge is very low. So what happens is you draw out water very quickly, but water which has taken thousands of years to gather below the ground, we are extracting within a few years. And then for that water to again gather below the ground takes a lot of time. So what has happened is that individual farmers are drilling competitively with each other, right? You all know that. All of us are familiar with, groundwater over extraction. But the important thing to remember is that groundwater is a common pool resource. It's a resource which people share. It's not like land which is separated into your name, so that becomes your land. Below the ground, anyone who owns land can access the groundwater below the land. This is British common law, From the 19th century, this law has still not been changed. The government of India actually asked me to chair a committee. We have drafted a new groundwater law, but it has yet not been implemented on the ground. So today the situation is that individual farmers are competing with each other to draw out this shared resource, and that is leading to the destruction of the aquifers, and it is also leading to the drying up of India's especially peninsular rivers. You see, where do our rivers, the rivers that you can see around you, where are they getting their water after the monsoon is over? The river flows in our peninsular rivers, and in the Himalayan rivers also, the springs are providing that water. After the monsoon, after the snowfall, the water that the rivers get is from base flows of groundwater. But if we over extract groundwater, then those base flows are not going towards the river, and the river is drying up, the aquifer is drying up. Then we can show all this through a beautiful animation, which I would like all of you to see. So you see, this is the situation before the Green Revolution, and two farmers have wells, and this is the aquifer from which they are drawing the water, and everyone is quite happy. Now comes the Green Revolution and the borewell drilling starts. So slowly the wells of the smaller farmers are drying up, and this large farmer who had done the initial borewell, he has got water in his bowl. Other wells have dried up. Now what happens, the credit being extended to the smaller farmers, they are also drilling borewells. So in the same aquifer, we have 4 or 5 borewells which are drawing out water, and see what's happening. Now the other farmer has gone even deeper. He says, I will teach you a lesson. How dare you take away my water? Now he thinks he's very happy, he's got all the water in the aquifer. But as we all know, slowly, see, nature is very fair in the justice she metes out. All the borewells have dried up and the aquifer has dried up. This is a very summary illustration of India's water problem today.
Yeah, it's going on.
Yeah. So now I will show you how rivers are drying up. You know what I mentioned about this. Initially, water flows from the aquifer towards the river. So this river is called a draining river. It's a little bit between surface water and groundwater. So water is flowing from the aquifer towards the river. You can see the arrows. Now, as the drilling is going on, the water table is falling, and as you know, water keeps its own level. The river has started losing water to the aquifer. Over time, both the aquifer and the river have dried up. So this is very important. By the way, all this presentation is available to all of you. You can make use of it. This is all a Creative Commons. I would be very happy if you use this, sort of teaching material for your own purposes. So now let us try and understand why this problem has become so serious. And the deeper roots of both the farm and water crisis, I am saying, lie in the crisis of the Green Revolution. See, the Green Revolution served the country very well in the first 20 years. In the 20th century, so to speak, there was increase in productivity, increase in farmer incomes. But in the 21st century, what has happened? More and more application of chemical inputs is not yielding corresponding increases in output. Yesterday, I mentioned in brief. So what's happening is farmers are being forced to apply more and more chemical inputs. The prices of chemical inputs are going up, but the output is not rising correspondingly. So more and more inputs are needed to yield the same output. This means the costs of production have gone up dramatically, and in fact, in many cases, farmer incomes have become negative. And that is why we see the phenomenon of farmer suicides in different parts of the country. So now let us understand how the two crises are linked to each other. See, if you look at the water that is being used in irrigation, 80% of this farm water is consumed by just 3 crops: rice, wheat, and sugarcane. And after the Green Revolution, these water intensive crops started being grown even in water scarce regions. Whether it is Punjab, Haryana get very little rainfall. They are arid zones of India. Whether you take Maharashtra's, really drought prone regions, you are growing very water intensive crops even in these areas. But before the Green Revolution, India had a much more diversified cropping pattern which was aligned with the regional agroecology of every region. So we will talk about that more as to how this problem can be solved. And of course, as you all know, the use of such high levels of chemical inputs has very serious health consequences. Recent research shows that they cause various sorts of cancer such as leukemia, lymphoma, brain tumors, Wilms tumors, Ewing's sarcoma, germ cell tumors. And cancer, you would all know, is the second most common disease in India, responsible for about 30 lakh deaths per annum. So these chemical inputs are also contributing to a major health crisis in India. This is just one dimension. I'll go to more dimensions after this. This is just a diagram which tells you, we need not go into it in detail now. It will be available to you as teaching material. You can see which are the kinds of problems that are being caused by the excessive use of pesticides. So, question is, fundamentally, what do we need to change? And my response to that question is, we have to change the Green Revolution visions of soils and the farm system as a whole. So let me explain, because the link between soil and water, what we need to do is to ask basic questions about the conception of the agricultural production system in general and of soils in particular under the Green Revolution. See, what you would all recall, because we were facing such major food shortages, the vision of the Green Revolution is essentially commodity centric. What does that mean? You focus on a few crops, you develop seeds which will be high yielding or hybrids, so that you can maximize output per unit area of land, given the right doses of fertilizers and pesticides. Now, this is a perspective that exclusively focuses on productivity in the sense of output per area of a given crop by specifically targeting soil nutrients or pest outbreaks. This, you all know, is the way we have achieved success during the Green Revolution. Now, the soil in this vision, we have to understand what is our vision of the soil under the Green Revolution. The soil was seen essentially as a stockpile of minerals and salts. And crop production was constrained. I'm sure those of you who are agriculture graduates know Liebig's law of the minimum, that is the nutrient least present in the soil. So what is the solution? You enrich the soil with chemical fertilizers, where the soil is just a base with physical attributes necessary to hold the roots of the plant. Crops and soil were brute physical matter, collections of molecules to be optimized by chemical recipes rather than flowing energy charged wholes. So this is the new conception of soil which has now come into complete scientific understanding, which we will try to understand. So I have three questions which as scientists we have to pose to our approach to the soil under the Green Revolution. Is the soil an input-output machine, a passive reservoir of chemical nutrients to be endlessly flogged to deliver even as it shows clear signs of fatigue? And I'll give you the data on soil fatigue in just a minute. Or is the soil a complex, interacting, living ecosystem to be cherished and maintained so that it can become a vibrant circulatory network which nourishes the plants and animals that feed it? So this is a different living soils concept, which has a completely dictates a different approach towards agriculture. So the question is, will a toxic, enervated ecosystem with very poor soil quality and structure, as also gravely fallen water tables, be able to continue to support the agricultural production system? That is the question as a nation, as a world we are facing. Actually, all over the world, the Food and Agriculture Organization is in the forefront of highlighting these concerns, and people are therefore moving towards agroecology, or what we are calling natural farming in India. Now, as I said, what is the state of the soil? So, Professor Ratan Lal, you would all have heard of him. He won the 2020 World Food Prize. He estimates that a weight of living organisms in a healthy soil should be about 5 tons per hectare. The activity and species diversity of soil biota are responsible for numerous essential ecosystem services. Soil organic matter content is an indicator of soil health and should be around 2.5 to 3% by weight in the root zone, in the top 20% of the soil. But when we look at the soils in the heartlands of the Green Revolution, whether it's Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Delhi, Central India, southern parts, it's hardly 0.2 to 0.5% soil organic matter. So why are we focusing so much on soils? I already explained some of the mechanisms, but let us understand. Now the FAO has estimated that generating 3 centimeters of topsoil takes nearly 1,000 years. And if the current rates of degradation continue, all of the world's topsoil could be gone within 60 years' time. This is how grave our crisis is. And soil has a very important relationship with water. So it is important to understand the key relationship between soil quality on the one hand and water productivity on the other hand. And we must recognize that every land use decision is also a water use decision. So soil organic matter affects the physical, chemical, biological, and ecological qualities of the soil. And I'll just explain that. In physical terms, the higher soil organic matter improves the water infiltration rate and the soil's water holding capacity because it determines the structure of the soil. Chemically, it impacts the soil's capacity to buffer against pH, its ion and cation exchange capacities, nutrient storage and availability, and nutrient use efficiency. So you know why we are finding more and more application of fertilizers, but the output is not coming? Because the nutrient use efficiency of the soil has gone down, because the SOM has completely collapsed. Biologically, SOM is a habitat and reservoir for the gene pool, for gaseous exchange between soil and the atmosphere, and for carbon sequestration. Now, this is most important today in the time of climate change. You know, everybody is talking of growing trees, but the biggest sequester of carbon is the soil itself. So we must pay very careful attention to the soil for multiple reasons, not just for water, not just for productivity, but also for climate change. And ecologically, soil organic matter is important in terms of elemental cycling, ecosystem carbon budget, filtering of pollutants, and ecosystem productivity as a whole. So, what we find is a very interesting phenomenon which scholars are now talking about. And all these readings I have put at the end of the presentation. You can read the original articles because, you know, in 1 hour, I'm trying to summarize a lot of material. So what we are finding, you know, scholars are now talking about the paradox of productivity. See, Green Revolution was all about increasing productivity. But what do we find now? A recent overview of the global food system points to the paradox of productivity. As the efficiency of production has increased, the efficiency of the food system as a whole, in terms of delivering nutritious food sustainably and with little waste, has declined. Yield growth and falling food prices have been accompanied by increasing food waste, a growing malnutrition burden, and unsustainable environmental degradation. So policymakers now have to pay very careful attention to moving from traditional preoccupations with total factor productivity towards total system productivity. We have to look at the productivity of the entire system. What is the definition of total system productivity? A food system with high total system productivity would be sufficiently productive to meet human nutritional needs while imposing few costs on the environment and society, so being sustainable and highly efficient at all stages of the food chain so as to minimize waste. It would optimize total resource inputs relative to the outputs. Maximizing TSP would maximize the number of people fed healthily and sustainably per unit input. In other words, it would increase overall systemic efficiency. So now, if this is the goal, if we want to move from total factor productivity towards total system productivity, we need a paradigm shift in agriculture. And this is what we are advocating, what the Honorable Prime Minister is advocating. You have to understand why the Honorable Prime Minister is strongly emphasizing natural farming, because he has understood that the old paradigm now has to be discarded. We have to move towards a new paradigm. So what are the major elements of the new paradigm? First, diversification of our cropping patterns to align them with agroecological conditions in different parts of the country. We cannot continue with the monocultures of the Green Revolution. Secondly, the technology of agriculture must move more and more towards nature-based farming solutions and water-saving techniques. What will this do? It will create multiple win-wins. In how many respects? For farmer incomes, river rejuvenation, which you just saw, soil health, water security, and consumer health. I will come to that. So, when we speak of natural farming, I have tried to provide to you a very summary slide on the approach and principles of natural farming. This is very important to understand, because this is what we are all talking about in this 5-day training program. The first is progressive rationalization and reduction of chemical inputs at the appropriate pace. Yesterday in Ramu's lecture, you all heard that we have to look at the soil. Every time we have to look at the soil and see what is the pace appropriate for each location for the reduction of the use of chemical inputs. It's not about making a flip-flop, that today you are applying a lot of chemical, tomorrow you just stop everything just like that. No, we have to take the approach of science. But our commitment has to be to respect nature, to respect agroecology, to respect soil health, to respect water table, to respect water quality, to respect farmer incomes. We have to keep monitoring all of these, and then, as many examples exist across the country, across the world, when you have done this progressive rationalization and reduction of chemical inputs, all of the goals that I just mentioned can be better satisfied. Number two, promoting crop diversification and a decisive movement away from the monocultures of the Green Revolution. Number three, focus on productivity of the whole farm system. Sometimes it's also called permaculture, which is a system of designing farm systems appropriately, moving away from the commodity-centric approach of the Green Revolution. Then we are regenerating the natural cycles and soil health to boost yields and pest management. What we are doing essentially is to leverage the power of nature itself. We are not to fight against nature. We have to align ourselves, make nature our ally, and then see the kinds of things that will unfold. And we have to reduce the demand for water, for irrigation, which has skyrocketed after the Green Revolution. Now I will explain each of these points in some detail. So what does it mean to reactivate the soil food web, which I just talked about, leveraging the power of nature? Natural farming leverages biological synergies amongst numerous plant and animal species, from soil fungi to trees, from soil bacteria or worms to livestock, etc. Plants exude enzymes, which are the food for the soil microbes, and as they multiply, their predators multiply, and the entire soil food web gets activated. This triggers the exchange process between plants, soil microbes, and soil nutrients. Thus, minerals that were otherwise locked are made bioavailable to plants. By stimulating this process, natural farming practices build soil humus, soil fertility, and soil structure on a continuous basis. And the resultant increase in soil moisture gives massive savings in water use. What we have not realized, that a very important part of the water balance identity which includes groundwater, which includes evapotranspiration, surface runoff. A very important element of that is soil moisture. And soil moisture can support, especially in our rain-fed areas, which have been the most neglected, so much crop production. So we have to reactivate the soil food web in order to benefit from all these consequences of doing so. So this is a diagrammatic presentation. Right now, you may not, you need to look at it very carefully, study it properly. This is your study material. When you are at home, when you are in your office, you please look at the soil food web and try, and this is all, some of these things are taught in biology classes in school, etc. But we have all forgotten this, I feel, and this is what we need to revive this knowledge, and then we have to teach the agricultural graduates, the farmers, in understanding the power of the soil food web. So then let's come to the other element which I was talking about. Now, crop diversification, I would say, is the single most important reform that we need in agriculture and in water. Since the Green Revolution, farmers have been incentivized to grow water guzzlers like wheat, rice, and sugarcane, which take up 80% of irrigation, as I just mentioned. Because public procurement by the government focuses on wheat and rice, and you have private mills which are purchasing sugarcane. So because farmers have an assurance of a minimum support price and public procurement, they are going on growing wheat and rice even in Punjab and Haryana, where rice certainly was never a native crop and has created a major water crisis in Punjab. So the first step in solving our farm crisis and water crisis has to be to introduce low water requiring, resilient and nutritious millets, pulses and oilseeds into public procurement. Once that happens, once this public procurement starts, and it has begun in many parts of the country, the government is now actively seized of this policy prescription. Some of you may know, I have recently chaired the committee to draft the new national water policy. And let me tell you, the most important recommendation of the new national water policy is to introduce low water requiring nutritious crops into the public procurement system so that farmers can be incentivized to grow these crops, especially in regions which are suited for them. Now, the standard objection to doing this, whenever I make this point, people say, but what will we do? Nobody eats millets. Nobody is interested in these crops. And where is the demand? I mean, if we have so much procurement, where will the demand come from? Well, the best way is to include them in the ICDS, midday meal and public distribution systems. They are the three largest programs of the kind in human history. Nobody has ever run such huge programs, school feeding, preschool feeding and public distribution system. We need to introduce them, so that creates a demand for these crops. The farmers will have incentive to grow them. And of course, we have to popularize their use. The National Institute of Nutrition is seized of this matter. The Poshan Abhiyan of the Government of India is essentially about this. And the huge nutritional benefits of shifting the cropping pattern towards nutri-cereals, pulses and oilseeds are well documented. India has a huge malnutrition and diabetes problem. Both of these problems can be solved in one stroke by diversifying India's cropping pattern to include so many of these nutritious, agroecologically sound and water-saving crops. Recently, I had done this exercise along with two of my colleagues, and this paper is given as a reference at the end of this presentation for the Niti Aayog and the FAO. The Niti Aayog asked me to do this study. The study asked this simple question: if we make a switch in cropping patterns to reflect the agroecological diversity of India, how much volume of water would India save by the year 2030? So what we did is, we have made an attempt to quantify the water that could be saved each year in 11 major agricultural states: Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Gujarat, Haryana, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Punjab, Rajasthan, Telangana and Tamil Nadu. These states together account for about 66% of the total irrigated area in this country. So what we did was, in these 11 states, we took the area under three most water intensive crops, rice, wheat and sugarcane, and redistributed this area to certain replacement crops, which were largely pulses and nutri-cereals. The choice of the replacement crops was governed by an analysis of the cropping pattern in these states in the period before the monocultures of the Green Revolution. Thus, the crops that we are suggesting as replacement crops are suited to the agroecology of each region, and their revival has a solid basis in both agricultural science and the experience of the farmers in these regions. So what we did was we took up certain kinds of scenarios of crop replacement. What we said was that between 10 to 25%, and in some cases up to 50%. See, we are not talking about completely replacing rice, wheat, and sugarcane by other crops. A lot of people misunderstand this. What we took is different scenarios. Suppose we replace 10%, 25%, 50%. What is the implication for the water savings that can be effected? So this gives you a table, and you can study this table in this presentation. You can study it in the paper, which is available at the end of this presentation. Each of these states, we took these kinds of crop replacement scenarios. And these are the crops. You can see, and when you have time, you study it in more detail. In each season, we have suggested certain kinds of replacement crops based on the logic of the kinds of crops that were grown in those states, in those regions. In fact, in certain states like Madhya Pradesh, we have now done a micro study of agroclimatic zones within Madhya Pradesh and suggested the crop replacements that could take place in each agroclimatic zone. And then what we arrive at, it's a fairly technical exercise, which I don't have time to go into right now, but you can study it. It's described in detail. If you want the raw data, everything is in the public domain. You can examine it for yourself. We find amazing amounts of water saving that can be done through these crop replacements, even by doing small shifts in cropping patterns in season after season. You can see how much the water savings can be effected through crop diversification. So I will conclude here by summarizing for you the major benefits that natural farming will give for water use in our country. First, it will improve the soil structure, which means there is a greater capacity to retain water. There is higher soil moisture, and therefore a reduced dependence on what is called blue water, that is irrigation. By reducing chemical inputs, we therefore require less water application in the production of the crop. The agroecologically appropriate cropping patterns will imply a reduction in water demand. So we are working both on the supply side and on the demand side. And better farm design, which is the essence of permaculture, reduces the water demand. So it's not just about the crop, it's about the entire design of the farm system, of combining trees, shrubs, grasses, plants with different root depths. So all this has been worked in great detail. There are living proofs of concept. And let me invite all of you, whoever wants to go to the field to understand how this can be done on the ground, speak to the farmers. See, listening to me and getting convinced is okay, part of the story. But real proof of concept lies when the farmers themselves will tell you the power of what we are calling natural farming. And of course, this has to be combined with many, many improved water management practices. I'm sure many of you are familiar. Systems of crop intensification, drip irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, many kinds of methods, especially we have done for water intensive crops on the one hand and also for rain-fed areas on the other hand. We can effect large volumes of water saving by adopting the different paradigm of natural farming. So what, to conclude, I am trying to say is, on the one hand, you are addressing the problems of farmer incomes, soil health, the water tables, water quality, but you're also looking at consumer health, consumer nutrition. We have multiple win-wins which are getting created by the adoption of natural farming, but particularly I wanted to emphasize the interrelationship between the farm crisis and the water crisis. Without taking a new paradigm of water management, you are not going to be able to solve the farm problem, and without adopting a new kind of agriculture, India's water problem cannot be solved. Thank you very much.
Now, any questions related?
Sir, what is the progress of linking the rivers, sir?
See, in the national water policy, we have taken a very clear view. The problem with the proposal of interlinking rivers, there are many problems. So I'll summarize few of them. See, the first issue is it is not clear which state says that it has got surplus water. Now, you all would have the impression that northeast of India at least has water in plenty. But let me tell you, I work in central India. Okay, all my life I've lived in a tribal village, 30 years. I have all the work that I have spoken to you about today has been done in a tribal region in Madhya Pradesh across 72 districts, as Renuka was saying. Now, today I am getting people from Meghalaya, Cherrapunji, you have all heard of. Huh? You know about Cherrapunji, highest rainfall, one of the highest rainfall regions of the world. Today, Cherrapunji has a major water problem. Can you believe it? And they are coming to Madhya Pradesh in my arid, semi-arid region to understand how to solve their water problem. So first problem with the interlinking of rivers proposal is that I told, the Honorable Minister, when I was chairing that committee in 2016, Uma Bharti ji was there. I said, you now have a chief minister from your own party in Assam. Why don't you ask him to give some surplus water to central India, etc. Well, the point is, no chief minister in the northeast is going to tell you that they have got surplus water. That's point number one. But it's a very small point. The more important point is that even if you do, if we were actually able to construct these large number of dams, displace millions of people, destroy our ecological, wealth of this country, what would it finally lead to is something now we have major scientific research on the Bay of Bengal, the Indian Ocean, and the relationship between the low salinity layer. So, you're all scientists, please listen carefully because it's a very important new scientific research. There's a Bay of Bengal program run by the Ministry of Earth Sciences, and this is coming from there. What we find is that the low salinity layer in the upper reaches of the Bay of Bengal has a very important role to play in triggering the Indian subcontinent's monsoon cycle. So the low salinity layer gives rise to high temperatures, which triggers the low pressure zone, which finally leads to the Indian monsoon. But why is the upper layer of low salinity? I'm sure all of you can guess the answer. The reason is that the fresh water of India's rivers enters the ocean. And as you know, the river water salinity is much lower than the ocean salinity. So the fact that river water flows into the sea, unlike what some engineers believe, is not a wasteful flow of water. It's not water wastefully flowing into the sea. It is a very important element in triggering the monsoon cycle in India. If that water stops flowing into the sea, if we interlink all the rivers like is being proposed, and we store all that water in the dams and we kill all the rivers, and the rivers are not able to meet the sea, the low salinity layer will not get created and the Indian monsoon cycle could be in serious threat. There is scientific research, published peer-reviewed work, which I can share with you, but this is a very, very dangerous idea, and therefore the national water policy has put many caveats about the interlinking of rivers. Thank you for that question, because this is, whenever you mention the water problem, immediately answer is interlinking of rivers, but it's not a solution.
I am Bhavsai Patel. I work as a head of and senior scientist Krishi Vigyan Kendra, YSA more than 33 years. I have observed that, sir, you mentioned that some of the states contributing about 66% of the irrigation system. And in Maharashtra, when looking for the only 18%, or rather now we can say that 16 to 18% irrigation is available. Till we are serving water for the major crops like sugarcane and other crops. It is very, very, we call as rethink about irrigation policy. And if a government decides to have a policy, to framework policy to divert the actually available irrigation water for that some of the crops that can useful for the total diversification of the agriculture as a natural farming, or we call it as organic farming. It is nothing but integrated farming. Integrating all the technologies, it should be integrated farming. We are discussing so many things about organic farming, natural farming, conventional farming. All this is nothing but now today is to be integrate every technology, even hybrid seed. We're talking about hybrid seed. Why not do hybrid seed then? It is a F1 generation. In naturally they are having a hybrid. So we can go for hybrid seed, but we can go for the straight varieties that can reduce our potential of irrigation use, as well as they are acquainted with the natural climatic situations. We have to design the policy so that we will diversify all these activities. My request is that, sir, being a national level of the policy framework, it has been decided that go for natural farming, but it is to be then readdressed to the state wise, so that Maharashtra is having more than 80% land is total is eroded land, or we called as undulated land, or some mountains and hills areas are there. Some of the area is having irrigated area and very plain zone and very nice soil. So they are cultivating all these crops. But what about others? We are looking for the 70% or 80% farmer.
I'll just
That is
respond.
Sure.
So the point is, I think you have made such an important point. This is one of my favorite points. Today it got left out, but I always give the example of Maharashtra. I put a quiz question. I asked people what percentage of Maharashtra's cropped area is under sugarcane. So people don't know, they give a big number. Actual fact, as you would know better than I do, is only 4% of the cropped area is under sugarcane, but 65% of Maharashtra's water is taken away by sugarcane. So when Mr. Devendra Fadnavis was the chief minister, he had invited me, we have such a major water problem. As you said, only 18%. He made a very great speech in the assembly. He said, Maharashtra has the biggest number of large dams in the country, but Maharashtra's irrigated area percentage is half of the national average. So the point is, we have only emphasized construction. We have not looked at the demand side of water, and demand side of water cannot be addressed unless we diversify the cropping pattern. So what I told the chief minister then, I said, sir, you reduce it from 4% to 2%, Maharashtra's water problem can be solved, because your water demand will 65% will come down to 30%. So as you said, but I must tell you, in the national water policy, we have strongly recommended this. Exactly what you're saying, that we must have policies which are region specific. You cannot have this one size fits all. See, the problem of the green revolution became, you are asking everywhere the same crops to be grown, the same crops are being procured. We have to decentralize all these decisions. So we have strongly recommended, and I am very hopeful, because the crisis always drives the reform. Today, till now, we could afford all this wastage of water, we could do whatever. Now we can't afford it. That's why Honorable PM has spoken about natural farming. Similarly, as you said, we have to speak about aligning the cropping patterns with the regional agroecology. I feel this is an idea whose time has come. All of you are the ambassadors of this idea. You have to take this to the farmer, and we will support you at the national and regional policy level.
Okay, sir. Mihir sir, it was an excellent presentation. Dr. N.H. Rao used to take, he was also in the Water Commission long back. Sir, one question is, see, now there are, the wheat basket, the rice basket, the rice bowl, and all these sugarcane bowls. See, all those things should go. See, and now the interlinking river, you just told it. See, but still, you must have seen recently how the farm bills were withdrawn, and then we pampered only a section of the people, and then we give them MSP. We also have a National Food Security Mission with about 80 million metric tons to be procured. So why only this pampering to some? So the moment these dams will go and all the groundwater and micro irrigation systems through natural farming and recharging takes place, I think all these protests will not come on the road. They will all be in the paper. What is your opinion?
No, I absolutely agree. You see, the point is our policies have got focused on just a few crops, on just a few regions. My question, I was giving a suggestion for in this context of the farm agitation. I said, look, are we procuring anything from the tribal areas of the country? See, I have lived in a tribal area. We have totally neglected our tribal people, our rain-fed areas. Our policies are not being directed towards the regions which we have neglected where real poverty exists. And these people do not have the kind of clout which they need to have. So, my submission to all of you today is that you are the people, you are the real agents of change. We will work with you now that the government is giving the right signals for us to move in the right direction. Let us work together. Let manage be the leader of this. See, I chair what we are calling a National Coalition for Natural Farming. This is the largest platform we have created of all stakeholders, including farmers, civil society, state governments, scientists. We are bringing everyone together. Let us make this into a national movement. And if all of us work together, I think the time has come when this change will have to come. Because if it doesn't come, as you have said, neither the water problem nor the farmers' problem will be solved.
No, no, sir, one last question added to this. So recently, every issue is politicized, make it that problem. So even politicians don't know the water issue. They say they will build a dam in all the fragile regions of this country. So if they adopt natural farming, all this protests will be nowhere. And, they might not get any votes.
No, see, you are right, but see, when we say it becomes political, we have also failed in our duty to educate the politicians. See, they also are looking for answers. But what happens? They becomes an echo chamber. They listen only to certain kind of advice which comes and that feeds itself and it keeps going in a loop. They at the margins have to reach the decision makers, and that is what I have been trying to do. And to some extent, it has begun to happen, is what I can say.
Sir, one thing is that most of the policies are ideal. They are one of the best and prepared by the persons in the deep research. But their implementation is such a bad that a good project is going to the vain.
So I am giving you a proposition. Okay, I am chairing the National Coalition for Natural Farming. We are dealing with millions of farmers across the country. You work with us. We carry your voice to the farmer. The farmer voice, the politician will have to listen to. देखिए क्या होता है, the scientist becomes isolated. Scientist sometimes becomes frustrated because he doesn't get the hearing, as you rightly said. But we have to solve the problem. We cannot say कि भाई कुछ नहीं हो सकता, हम हाथ पे हाथ धर के बैठ जाएंगे या नेगेटिव हो जाएंगे.
नहीं सर, ये तो नहीं हम कह रहे हैं साधा मैं आज देखिए सर, मैं 20 साल से इस लड़ाई में हूँ. मैंने जॉब नहीं की, प्राइवेट सेक्टर में अपना एग्री क्लिनिक डेवलप किया, अपनी कंसल्टेंसी कर रहा हूँ और लड़ाई लड़ रहा हूँ गवर्नमेंट्स के उनसे जो वहां पर बैठे हैं या आगे. और अपना आज थोड़ा बहुत मेरे लोग जानते हैं मुझे कि भी मैं इतनी लड़ाई करके और इस जगह पे खड़ा हूँ. बट इन प्रैक्टिकल दे आर नॉट फॉलोइंग अस.
No. So Rajendra Singh ji, the answer is simple. We need a million Rajendra Singhs, है ना. अब आप अकेले हैं और भी लोग अकेले हैं. हम सबको अपना अकेलापन दूर करना है. हम साथ मिलके करेंगे ना. We have to become a formidable voice. ठीक है ना.
One or two things which I wanted to get clarified. I think maybe one or two earlier present participants also discussed about it. How do we replace such huge areas which guzzle water, like paddy or sugarcane, etc., which guzzle a lot of water, and then they are in large areas. This is a big challenge because replacement of area here is not so easy. Whether you want it or you do not want it, whether government advocates it or does not advocate it, simply farmer is raising paddy because he has got water. If water is available freely, it's coming, so he is raising it. Nobody is listening to the state government policy or the central government policy to reduce the water usage as well as go to alternate crops. Nobody is listening to that. So this is going to be a challenge unless the consumer demands are also aligned with that producers' action.
Very correct. You have beautifully formulated the problem.
Yes, sir.
So Suresh ji, the answer is very simple, as you said.
Sir.
See, demand has to be generated, and demand can be generated in two broad ways. One is by greater consumer awareness, especially in urban areas, which is
Sir.
beginning to happen. We also have now private players in this space. There are a lot of companies now which are marketing non-pesticide food, organic food, etc. But you know, the real game changer, which I would suggest to you, and which we have started doing in certain states, is that if we link our midday meal program and the Anganwadi supplementary nutrition program and the public distribution system with these crops. See what happens, government is the biggest buyer, no? Finally, the scale, like as you are saying, very large areas are involved. If government procurement becomes decentralized, firstly, and distribution also decentralized, why should you have FCI godowns being filled with wheat and rice and taking them centralized, then usko wapas la rahe hain? It's a completely irrational system we have set up for the last 50 years. So we have to go for decentralized public procurement, diversify the procurement portfolio. So I'm not saying do away with wheat and rice, आप उसको भी रखिए, लेकिन you can in each area, depending on the agroecology, which all of you will tell us, भाई you are the people who have the scientific knowledge to advise each district, state government, which are the kinds of crops which are suitable, and those can be added into the procurement basket, and that can be fed into the midday meal, the ICDS. You know, I have started large scale work on this. We have involved the National Institute of Nutrition. We are involving dietitians. देखिए आज बच्चों को हैमबर्गर और पिज्जा ही पसंद है, the junk food. So we have to, if you catch them young, and so what we are doing is we have Jawar Utsav, बाजरा मेला, उसमें क्या होता है हम उनको delicacies खिलाते हैं इन चीज़ों की. And you know, I by the way personally am a diabetic.
Sir.
For 20 years I was eating medicines. For the last 5 years I have stopped all medication because I say sometimes jocularly, I have gone beyond the green revolution diet. I'm now eating the nutri cereals, the oil seeds, the pulses, such a nutritious diet. I don't need the diabetes medicine. So if from childhood, and I am enjoying that food, let me tell you, it's not that people think that these things they are very tasty. But we need to pay attention to all this. We have to build good diets, we have to build good nutrition profile, we have to link it to the market, as you said. Because, you know, you said, किसान के पास पानी है वो उगा रहा है, लेकिन अब पानी खत्म हो रहा है साहब.
पानी खत्म हो रहा है.
You see, that is where the crisis will drive the reform. That is why I'm optimistic. Because in Punjab, look at the fall in the water table, look at the fall in water quality in Haryana. There are major water problems that are arising now. You cannot anymore continue with business as usual. So somewhere or the other, the crisis is creating the opportunity, but all of us have to come together to seize this opportunity. And therefore, the role of manage, I am repeatedly emphasizing, as a leader of this capacity building effort, because unless we build capacities, देखिए ये काम हम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन human resource की कमी है. We don't have people who understand these issues properly and can convey to the farmer. So all of you have to join as the master trainers, as people who will themselves train thousands of young men and women who can go and spread this word. तभी जाके ये change जो है बड़े scale पे हो पाए.
The biggest challenge for us now is, sir, that each and every state is demanding a centrally sponsored big project for their states. And each and every state is fighting for that. We want a very big project which should be totally centrally sponsored and not without even 1 paisa as a expenditure from the state. So this is a totally lopsided view of what is going to happen in future and what we are demanding now.
No, but you know, actually, Sureshji, this has always been the case. If you look at the whole history, that is where we have gone wrong. Because we think throwing money at problems is going to solve the problem. It doesn't solve. You are absolutely right. And finally, today, although they are demanding, at 1 year, I think they are also listening to other voices. And they are realizing that however many projects they may set up like this, like I told you the example of Maharashtra, with, you know, all the large dams of the country, their irrigated area, the water is not reaching the farmer. So water management has to be the new paradigm, which is what we are trying to work on.
And another important thing which you highlighted was, sir, that water, when it is let into the sea, will generate more rainfall and then better environment.
This
This
is
is
science.
really.
People who say they are scientists don't speak the language of science. That is the unfortunate thing.
Just my request, we are here to learn how to implement this farming, natural farming in the field. Rather, we should avoid discussing the policies, right, sir? Isn't it? Because this is taking a lot of time just discussing the policy, which is neither in your hand nor in my hands. My only focus is that I have to learn how to implement this natural farming among the people, among the farmers, sir. So I think we should focus more on doing this program on the implementation part only, rather than discussing the policy part, sir. Thank you, sir.
See, I think
Sure.
we should get out of this either or polarized mind. If we learn the how, but we don't know the why, if we don't know the larger picture, we can get lost. So I promise you, we are going to teach you in great detail the how. But it is very important to understand, what I was telling you about the soil. If you don't have that in mind, you are going to get lost in the details of the technique. So unless we know why we are doing what we are doing, we are going to get lost in that micro detail. So, but I agree with you. This program is only the first program. We are going to have many such programs. We are giving you an overview right now. We are trying to explain to you the background of why the problem has arisen and what are the solutions. And by the way, don't ever say it is not in your hands or my hands. It is in the hands of the people of this country to change the policies. Policies change only when there is a pressure from the ground to change the policies. Let me assure you, in my experience, all policy change is driven by people like you and me, and the farmers on the ground. Never forget this.
I was stating that, as you rightly said, that area under rice and wheat cannot be replaced. It can be optimized. As in case of Uttar Pradesh, around 60% area is under rice and wheat, and 7% area is under sugarcane. But especially in eastern part of the state, several districts has more than enough water especially in the Kharif season, that is from July to October. Maximum area is flooded or oversaturated. In that case, there is no any alternative crop which can replace to rice. That is because if sometime anyone asks to us what can be our suitable alternative crops, we are
Dr.
unable
Singh,
to tell them.
Dr. Singh, we are
Sir.
not wanting to replace for the sake of replacing, है ना भाई?
Yeah,
जहाँ
sir.
पे वो appropriate है भाई, जहाँ पानी का flood है. East, in fact, the paper that I have shared with you, it is entirely saying Eastern India should focus on rice. There should be sugarcane. See, where there is a plentiful water, we must grow. But why are you growing
Yeah.
rice in Punjab and Haryana? उसमें तो आप सहमत
Exactly,
होंगे.
sir.
तो
Sir,
Yeah,
आप
yeah.
सही कह रहे हैं. You are 100% right. But that is the policy change we need. Otherwise,
Sir,
आप कुछ भी जो micro level work करते रहोगे ना, you may learn the how, but you will not be able to do anything because वहां पे आपका गलत crop grow कर रहा है.
Right time.
Sir, our opinion on one more thing, that what is about quality aspect of the water? Is it affecting to the cropping pattern, cropping system, crop productivity, some aspect?
See, the major impact that has been studied of water quality is on human health, right? It also affects the capacity of the body to take up nutrition. Now, as far as productivity is concerned, naturally, if you get to toxic levels, then the plant that comes out also is affected by that toxicity. So there are some studies on that. But major issue, of course, is about human health. Pesticide, we don't even have any regulation. The farm workers are getting cancer because there is no equipment. So the entire set of issues around water quality are extremely important, and are in the new national water policy we have given great importance to water quality. We have said is the single most important unaddressed issue.
Convincing the people attitudes and acceptance. How?
See, last 30 years, that is the work I have done, working with farmers to persuade them to change, from their existing practices to the alternative practices. I think the only way this works is the strategy that we have adopted. You start on a small scale with a small number of farmers. Any area you will work, you will find some farmers are much more receptive than others. This is about all change actually. When we started the watershed management program, same thing happened. When we went into any kind of reform of any of the government programs, initially you will get few people who are responding. They become your champion farmers. So what we do is we make video films, and those video films are also available. We can share them with you, which are, what is unique about those films is the farmers themselves are speaking, especially women farmers are explaining in their own language the how also and the why also. By the way, they are very good at the why also, because they have understood by doing. Then that can be taken to scale to a larger and larger number of farmers. And that can, then what happens, there is a tipping point. Once you reach a certain number, say a few thousand farmers, then it spreads like wildfire. So change always will start slow. Let us start on a small part of the field, but then once you have a critical mass of farmers, the change will become exponential.
Sir, one last thing. The new farm bills were introduced in the light of diversification, so that people will shift away from wheat paddy and not again and again stick to MSP and all those things. But anyway, what happened, it, sir. That's all. So the natural farming also, see, we cannot put it in the law. Okay, it should come from the bottom, from the extension system, and then the change should come. But the change,
100% agree, sir.
At a policy level, it did not work.
100% agree. We should not impose. That is
we should not impose. It cannot come from policy level. From ground level, it should come extension, and then the change should come.
No. It's a two-way process. Policy change also must facilitate. Therefore, procurement must be diversified. See, policy will change in a facilitative manner. But you are absolutely right. It has to be a bottom-up change led by people like you who are telling the farmer about the options, and the farmers will put, as I keep saying, farmers have to put the pressure on government that this has to be the policy.
Regarding that one district, one product, in our districts, carrot crop, they have given from the one district, one product. And after giving a representation, they have included all the vegetables, sir. That information I have to give in the quorum, sir.
This audience is of extreme importance, because if the agricultural revolution which we need in this country has to come, it is the people I have been talking to today. I've had a great pleasure, a beautiful interaction. Thank you very much.